Get started. I'm gonna close my office door. All right, good morning, business and media folks. How's everyone doing today?
Morning.
We trust that everyone is doing splendid, and we thank you guys for convening with us for our second session, which is intended to be an action session, but a discussion nonetheless. We're in for what I hope will be another great session, and I think Ms. Rand did a fabulous job the last time, and she is with us again this morning and prepared. Let me commence by reading some of the practices for the meeting. After you've joined the meeting, the technician will enable your ability to use your microphone and your webcam. Participants using mobile devices for meeting participation will not be able to use their device's camera. Participants using mobile devices should use the raise hand feature when they desire to speak. Requests to speak are automatically prioritized by the meeting software when the raise hand feature is used. A meeting technician will unmute your microphones for participants using mobile devices at the appropriate time to allow participants to speak. All other participants can exercise control of their microphone and camera. Meeting technicians will use the chat feature to communicate important information. Contact us at equityinitiative@codb.us or 386-671-8203 for additional information. I hope you all received both emails from my office and our staff as it relates to where we are and some of the homework I hope you all were able to consider. And at the conclusion of this morning's session, I will come back and refresh where we're headed and what I hope we will be able to do in the coming months. In addition, I will give you some insight on something that I hope to bring to our community as it relates to equity that will make us all a better place. So without any further delay, time is money and time is energy and effort to the universe. So I want to go ahead and introduce again our facilitator who comes with a wealth of experience, and we've all met her hopefully the last time. And if she's new to some, she is Theresa Rand, former CEO for our local YMCA, former chairperson of the Chamber of Commerce, Daytona Beaches, as well as a leading consultant in our area for communications, and she's a boss lady. So with no further ado, please allow me to introduce Ms. Rand.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I see some of the faces that were here last week and some new faces. Dre, it's great to see you out there. Robin, I see your picture, but good to know you're out there. Bob Williams, so on and so forth. But I think I know most of the people on the call this morning. So just want to take just a second to kind of review a little about last week, starting with what the mayor set up last week's message was called a listening session. And I think we had some great conversation. But today's session is not so much a listening, although I want to encourage you to be respectful and listen to each other. But today's session is really about action. And over the next few sessions, we're going to talk about what is it that we do in our own business, or what is our experience in our own business. We want to talk about our own experience, not projecting what we perceive someone else's experience is. And then I want to talk about what we currently do in our workplaces and maybe some things we should be doing or can move forward. I'm not a fan of the word should. If we should, we ought to do it. But we got to start somewhere. So that's where I wanted to start today. And we've got a couple hours, but we want to be very succinct in our comments, kind of stick to the topics. I'm going to lead us a little bit by making some leading comments or questions, and then I'll open it up to the floor for conversation. We are recording, right? Yep, I see we're recording. So we'll be able to go back and take notes. And at the end of these focus groups, and Mayor, how many of these groups are we going to have? I can't remember.
Well, we'll have this one, and then depending on how we do today, if we feel the need to come back in the near future, we will. If not, we will come back in several months from now.
Okay.
But we'll play it by ear, sort of organic, and I don't want to script everything.
Perfect. Okay, so what we want to come out of, and Mayor, correct me if I misspeak, but is action items. One of the things that I personally, I'm leading a not a focus group, but a group with my friend, Dr. Primrose Cameron, who many of you know. And we've been leading a study using the book White Fragility, not really a book study, but a conversation. There's a couple people here that are part of that, Sue being one of those. And my fear is that we have the conversation now. And I think we know the conversation really escalated with the murder of George Floyd. But my fear is that we're going to get complacent again and stop the conversation without really making any change in our communities. So I'd like to open up with that as a challenge, if you will, that we keep showing up, but more importantly, that we take action on the things that we talk about today. So with that being said, fair enough. Mayor, anything to add you want to talk about? I specifically emailed Sharon yesterday to make sure we were going to show the picture. So you want to just refer to that for those that are new on the call?
Sure. If you look in the left-hand corner, you will see a photo that many of us have seen. And there is actually a third photo, but I prefer, because we're dealing with equity, to show these two, but at some point in time, we will expose everyone to the third photo. But the photo in the corner basically illustrates what I view as the difference between equity and equality. And our objective, essentially, in our community, is to create a community where we can be as bias-free, for one, and that's a good starting point for everyone. Just to treat people fairly and to be as non-judgmental as possible and as respectful as possible. But beyond that, I was just driving through Midtown, which is our 32114 zip code here in Daytona Beach, and it's a part of the city that doesn't experience the level of equity that I would like. And I was thinking, we have a lot of work to do here. But if you look at the second photo, you can see that it gives, everyone has what they need to see the game. And that has to be a large part of what we focus our work on long-term as a community. How do we give people what they need to participate in the game, or provide them with a fair opportunity to see the game, participate in the job market, participate in the health industry, etc. So let's refer to that as sort of as sort of why we're here, and I think it's a good thing for us to return to, and I have every intention to keep it posted throughout all of our sessions.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So with that, let's jump right in. The first statement or question that I want to propose to the group is to identify for yourself, not necessarily your business, but for yourself, what is your standard for equity? I mean, we heard what the mayor said, we see the picture, but as we all know, if you ask 10 people a question, you'll probably get 10 different answers. So what is your standard for equity? Anybody want to start the conversation? You have control of your mute buttons, I believe. Dre, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me, Theresa, Mayor. Pleasure to speak with you all. Hello, everybody. In my business here, I run a publishing company, recording studio. I have a label as well here, based in Daytona Beach. And just to give you guys a little background, we have won Grammys. We're Grammy nominated. We've won an Academy Award, as well as an Oscar Award right here in Daytona Beach. And one of the things that I like to always say is, because people always say, oh, we're equal, but equity has been very important in the way that I try to determine equity. And I'm a Black owned business, but I do have a Hispanic that works here, a Hispanic person. I have a person who's Caucasian that's on our team as well. And we work with a plethora of different people, races, cultures. And the biggest thing about equity is really dealing with ignorance and understanding the differences that we have, because sometimes we come from different places in different worlds. And if where I grew up in society is different from where you grew up, we may perceive or see things a different way. And one of the things that I do, and one of the things that really matters when we discuss equity, because like you see here, these people in this picture, they all need a different thing to be able to be at the same level. And in the Black community, what has happened is, and many don't understand, there's a Dr. Fred Price. He spoke on a message where he was explaining that being Black in America was like playing Monopoly, but starting with no money, right? And so what happened was, there's so many people in our community who don't even in our own community don't understand equity, because we've had to be so individualized to take care of self, or be self-centered and self-focused. So the first thing that I do is educate myself, and I also speak with my team, because if you don't understand their purpose, you don't understand their intention, you don't understand who they are or where they're from, you may not understand the problems that they're having, or the mental problems, or everyone's going through COVID, but this guy doesn't have money anyway. So maybe he's extra hungry. And the equity is not, hey, I brought everyone pizza. It may be me personally going to one of the guys on my team and saying, hey man, I bought dinner for the week for your family, or something like that. So I think that it's being available and being accountable to yourself. Like when the mayor said he rode through Midtown, I was running through the park, Buchanan Park over on Bellevue today. And I run there a lot of mornings, and it may not be a big deal, but there's so much junk in the water. And it's like, it doesn't take money, right? It takes time and your resources to clean it up. And there's a huge wall on Mason that's a huge white wall that's just dirty. It only takes paint and hands. And I think that a lot of the things that will show, like in this time of COVID, what I did to show equity to my team was, we did a lot of maintenance around the store, around the studio, painted the walls, and we got the fixtures done, and we did all of these different things to show the investment, to say, hey guys, we care about you, we care about our space, we care about our community, we care about the outside of our building, we care about the grass, we can invest in ourselves. And I started taking accountability for myself and my team, and making us all take accountability to say, hey guys, not what need, we always go, what needs to be done? And it's a long list of things to be done. So for equity, let's start at, what can we do? What can we do that benefits me? What can we do that benefits others? What can I do in my power with the resources that I have? If somebody needs, like, for instance, if someone needs a commercial, like, we're operating at a very small capacity, but we're open. We're doing TV, we're doing radios. We just had a show on Hulu that just came out. And so there's still opportunities to give what we have and to use what we have to build the value and let everyone feel value. If the kids are going back to school, my children are going back to school the first semester, but if the children are going back to school, they still need book bags, they still need masks, they still need all those different things. And if it's 10 of us putting $20 together, that's $200 to provide a need that doesn't necessarily benefit us or goes beyond us. And so I'm very open to that. I mobilize a lot of people here in the city with us, a lot of the young guys. a lot of the people who are interested in and impacting and creating change and being change agents, who we can come together and say, yo, we're gonna go clean up this park whether y'all want to or not. But if we clean the park up and we make it beautiful for the ducks and for the people that run and for the moms that walk their babies and for the homeless man that takes a break and for the panhandling lady who's sleeping in her car, and we make it safe and we make it accountable, the value, when we see the value in things, sometimes we start to begin to understand the equity.
Thank you, Dre.
Let me interject, Dre. That wall was painted about a week ago. And you mentioned one other thing, but that wall was painted, and I grew up not far from there. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit as it relates to equity. And
yes, sir.
those are things that we have to take advantage of. But thanks for that.
Great examples of what you do personally and what you can do for the community. And I've had the benefit of touring your facility, and I need to come back because half of it was done and half of it wasn't. So I'm sure if I know you, it's done now.
It's upgraded so much. So yes, please come.
Yeah, great. So it's a great facility to see. Sue, you have to unmute yourself. Mayor, I don't know if anybody on your team can give me co-host responsibilities, and then I can mute and unmute people if somebody knows how to do that. Go ahead, Sue. You just muted yourself again.
Okay.
There you go. There you are.
Okay. Theresa and I have been working on this for a bit and having real discussions. You know, one of my favorite sayings is lead follower, get out of my way. And with this equity thing, I've been in my business for a long, long time. And last week, I was actually honeyed by another broker. The discussion, the negotiations were going on, and it was a honey, like, you don't understand. You just pat, pat, pat on the head. That's the same as saying boy. That's the same as saying, you know, a lot of I'm bigger than you are type things. So equity is, I bring my own game. I do appreciate being let into, I played goalie because I didn't skate fast enough to play another position on the hockey team. But they let me play goalie because I was dumb enough to let them fire pucks at my face. So, you know, there are ways around it to get in. But at this stage of my life, this stage of my career, to be honeyed by a younger person, a male person, it really ticked me off. And so I say, bring your game, but don't demean somebody else.
Great point, Sue. And we can use that analogy in a lot of different ways for all of us, male, female, black, white. That's a great analogy that we have to, and I think that's a good example of equality and equity. You have to meet people where they are, and not every, and Dre said it, not everybody on this group has brings a different experience to the table. So the beginning, the simplest way of starting the conversation is to meet people where they are, which is not always where you are or where you even might think you are. Keith, I hate to point anybody out, but I'm going to. Could you talk to us a little bit about identifying, what are your thoughts on equity? You're muted, Keith.
Sue was talking, I was thinking
Perfect.
About the work experience. You know, not only do we work with companies outside the area and globally, but even within our own organization, you know, I lead by example, but I also treat all of my employees equally. Some people from outside, and Theresa, you know them, and the mayor knows them, and Robin, and a lot of Bob, they know them, but sometimes, you know, they look at me as the senior person, both in years and experience, but my staff is equally as knowledgeable, but they're younger. And one is a female and one is a male. And yet sometimes they're perceived as not being suitable to be in, you know, high level meetings. And yet they're as knowledgeable, you know, as I am. My executive vice president spent 8 years at Enterprise Florida, leading project managers and leading the incentive team. But sometimes she's looked at as a female as maybe not the appropriate person to be in a meeting. And that's offensive to me. And for use for female, and then also the, you know, the gentleman that I have as the VP is knowledgeable, and sometimes folks say, well, we only, you know, we want the senior person. We don't want to talk with these other people, and yet they are part of the team. And I don't think maybe Heather has been called honey. I think she has.
Oh, I'm sure she has.
I think she has. So, and we joke about that. But that I was just, when Sue was talking, that really is what brought to mind just the inequities of how people are treated within my office by others.
Thank you, Keith.
Not by me. And I do want to see the recording studio, Dre. So count me in. So I'm jealous that Theresa saw it. So I'm ready.
I'll go with you, Keith, so I can see the rest of it.
You too, Mayor. Great.
Great
Thank
comments, Keith. And I think what I just want to kind of reflect back what I heard you say.
Please,
is
it's recorded. So I hate for that to be recorded. That makes sense.
If people are not treating other people on your team in an equitable manner, the magic in what you said is that as the senior person, you have the power to make that change.
Right.
Because if you choose to not allow Heather or Chris or any of them to be in the room, they can't be in the room. So nothing changes.
Yes. So I have changed that. So
yeah, that person
right
with
there.
the power
has
to be willing to make the change for their team members. So I think, to me, that's the valuable piece. Sarah, I was going to call on you next. I knew you were ready.
So I think that, you know, I can tell you that I've been a business owner, a really, really small business owner, bought this business in '97. That was a 17-year-old business when we bought it. A manufacturer's rep, only have a few employees. So, but recently, in the last 3 years, I became a partner at a manufacturing plant. And we started this business, built a 120,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Greenville, South Carolina. And we chose Greenville because of the skilled labor, okay? And because there's BMW and Michelin and GE and Whirlpool, and it just goes on and on. There's so much manufacturing there. There's 3 of us partners, and I've been in sales my whole life. One of my partners has been in manufacturing, a young under 30, his whole life, and then a partner who's been in construction his whole life. And we came together and said, you know what? What are we going to do when we go to hire these people? And the very first thing we said is we're going to pay the absolute most, more than anybody else pays. So obviously there's a give and take there. We got very, very skilled labor. We're hopefully going to get committed labor that's going to stay and not leave. But in exchange for that, for me, more importantly, is that we're paying a more than living wage. We're providing a life and a lifestyle that is going to be much less stressed. They have amazing benefits. And that was our priority, is what are our people? What do we want for our people? Because we're all only as good as the people that work for us.
Absolutely.
And so I think that, you know, that's just, so now in the meantime, since then we started this business, And Nucor Steel, who's one like the largest steel company in the US, approached us like almost immediately and wanted to buy us. And we sold to them and closed last December. There are books written about Nucor's management style and their culture. And it's little things, whether it's just you call each other teammates or not, from the top all the way down to the bottom. And then what are your priorities, whether you're public, I've always been involved with public business, or private businesses, obviously they're my own. And now all of a sudden we're part of a publicly traded company. But it doesn't matter whether you are or not, private or public, it's what you decide, who you decide to be. And every single thing has to be intentional. And it takes time. And, so Mayor, I will tell you that when we just talked about maybe, is this going to be our last meeting? I want to blow my brains out, because how can this just be a last meeting? We're just getting started. I don't know how you have to I think we have to approach this as employers and as businesses. You got to create your vision and who do you want to be? And then you got to write it out and you got to implement it and you got to collaborate. In my opinion, there should be health people on here and education people on here to tell us business owners what they need so that we can try to be that for them and not just leave it up to government. So I think that the main thing about equity is we can talk about it all day. We can have a million book discussions. I'm facilitating like 2 a week, plus there's 3 other book discussions going on. We could talk about it all day, but if we do not intentionally implement and work the plan, then this is a waste. So I definitely want to go on record for advocating for more than this meeting, more than a few months out. So, okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think what I heard the mayor say is that it's kind of organic, that we will continue to have meetings as long as we feel like we're making progress. And I agree. I think it's going, and I said that early on, my fear is we're going to have a couple meetings or a couple book studies. And then those of us that this conversation doesn't affect go back to life as normal. So I appreciate that comment. And there are other focus groups, just so everybody knows. And Mayor, I keep feeling like I'm speaking for you, but there's education, there's health, there's neighborhood, there's clergy, there's four more, I believe, other focus groups. And at the end of this, we are going to hear the input from all the other groups, but the groups are segmented. So, and the education one I was on was fascinating, and I plan to be back on that one this week. The others were good. They're all good, but that one was just really fascinating to me, what we are and are not doing along these lines in our school system. So thank you for that. Who else wants to, one more just to talk about your personal standards for equity, and then I'm going to move us along with another statement. Anybody else? Okay, you know by now I'm not bashful about calling on people. Okay, so I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to listen to the live YouTube or Facebook with Dr. Ibram Kendi last night. I see some heads nodding. It's going to be on YouTube for 30 days. IBRAM. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. And he wrote the book Anti-Racist. He's in his mid-30s. And it was a fascinating conversation. It's a fascinating book. But he talked about the definition of racist and the definition of equity. He actually spoke about equity. And he made a comment, and I'm paraphrasing, so please listen to it yourself, that we all believe we're doing what's right in the world of equity. So one of the things I want you to think about in this forum, and I'm going to give you an example of my thoughts on this as former CEO of the Y. While everyone on this call is interested in implementing change, or you wouldn't be sitting here for 2 hours week after week. But what is the change that maybe you can make in your own sphere of influence? Something that you might can do more of, or better, or start. So as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about my career at the Y, and there were a lot of things I could have done better. There were some things we did well, but there were things we could have done better, as opposed to trying to treat all facilities the same, all members the same, talk about consistency. You know, some Ys in some locations should not pay the same money as Ys in other locations. But you get so caught up in looking at the numbers and making sure everybody's treated fairly or equally. And then if nobody speaks up, life just goes on. So I've committed personally, because I'm not the CEO of the Y anymore, but to speak up in my sphere of influence when I see something, hear something that is not equitable. And that's not always a popular thing to do, as I've found out recently by speaking up in some places. But it's the only thing that's going to make change. So what is something that you think you can do, you can start, you can do more of, or you can add on to what you're doing personally or in your business? And Bob Williams, I know you're out there, so at some point I want to hear from you. And Robin King too. Everybody has control of theirs, Robin.
Hey, Teresa. So I mean, knowing what the goal of this week is, because I'll listen to several of these sessions as well, because one of the things in the plan is I want to hear as many best practices that I hear from all the different segments. Because as Sarah, I think, pointed out, this is also interconnected. None of us can do this alone in one place. I'm a resident of 32114. And I'm embarrassed to know that more than 50% of our children in 32114 is at poverty level or less. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's my sphere of influence, but I'm going to make it my sphere of influence. But in looking at the plan, and this also kind of goes to, I think, what Sarah was touching on, this isn't a one and done, this is a plan. So I've done some research over the last week and have found the two primary things that as a company we'll do. We have 75 people who work in the career centers who work with a wide range of individuals who do not have equity, and how do I help them? So we'll be looking at, one is I found a self-assessment for a company to really take a look at where their weaknesses are. So we'll be doing that. The other is then I'm committed that all staff, frontline to leadership, will do innate bias training. I started a conversation with Bethune-Cookman. I hope that they have that available, and that's something that we could do. We're actually, all the staff right now are doing contextual leadership with Susan Rank.
Susan, yeah.
We were going to put that on hold because we couldn't physically get together. And because of this conversation, I decided, no, we need that, because I think before we can even do the innate bias training and getting into this, that everyone has to recognize that filter through which they see everything. Kind of going back to what you said, Theresa, that what I am doing is right. It's you know, so there's a lot of things that are out there. I appreciate you putting in the YouTube video information, but so that, and then I also invited the mayor to come and talk to my board about this initiative, because I want this from my board level all the way to the front line, front desk operator, that we're all understanding what we're going to own as we move forward with whatever plan that ends up being, after we've identified better what our weaknesses really are.
Great. Robin, is that assessment something that you can tell us how to find?
It was something, so it's amazing when you Google DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And inclusion, yeah.
And then the self-assessment is actually the Portland State University Cultural Competence of Self-Assessment Questionnaire. I can copy that actually and put it in the chat so you can all see it. But
Okay, if you put it in the chat, that'd be great.
through the website that I found, it's available. And actually, I downloaded a PDF, so I can, if you can't find it, I can definitely send that on.
And just so everyone knows, and I'm not trying to insult everyone, but we're all learning Zoom these days. Everything that goes in the chat, if you look down at the bottom over to the right, there's 3 little dots there. If you click on those dots, a drop down box comes up and it says save chat, and you can save everything in the chat to reference back to in whatever file you want to save it in. So just a little
I learned something new on these every time I get on.
Exactly. Don't we all?
Thank you.
Okay, so Portland State. So there it is. Thank you very much for
You're
that.
welcome.
And now I made Bob come out of hiding. Thank you, Bob.
I really wasn't planning to say anything today, Theresa. Thank you very much. But to be honest with you, I think for me, as a commitment to gain more awareness, I think, and this has been a journey for me. I have to thank the Daytona Regional Chamber. They have an awesome leadership program, and I went through a simulated society exercise, and
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away how it works, but you're divided up into groups, and I was in the group that essentially was the poverty group. And by the end of the day, my whole perspective on life had changed. So not that I have any answers, but I think the first, I have accepted that I need to improve my awareness, and then in my sphere of influence to share that growing awareness. And so my commitment is to step out of my comfort zone and support great leaders like Mayor Derek Henry. And so I've agreed to moderate one of the sessions like you're doing such a fantastic job.
Oh, awesome.
So thank you very much.
Good. What session are you moderating, Bob?
Health and Social Services.
Awesome. Great. Who else wants to talk about something they're doing they can improve on, or something new? So many of you have your faces. I hate to call on you, but I will. Josh, go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Josh McCann with Daytona Tortugas. I will say in a minute something that I've been thinking about that perhaps the Tortugas can do as an organization. But first, I wanted to just touch on the picture that we talked about this morning. I wanted to bring up that I read a really interesting, first of all, I appreciate the picture. I think the picture overall does a pretty good job of kind of capturing the general nature of equity. And Mayor Henry, I do appreciate the baseball analogy. But I did read a really interesting critique in the past week or so about that image, that it does it's interesting that it doesn't really capture the systemic nature of some of the inequality that we're talking about. Because for one thing, all the people should be more or less the same size, right? And if we're going to really truly depict systemic inequality, the ground should probably be slanted, right? Because that's part of the whole issue, is that, it's not just the fact that everybody has the same opportunity. It's that, theoretically everybody has the same opportunity, but in reality, not everybody has the same, is on an even playing field. So I like that critique. I can go ahead and post that link here in the chat.
Thank you.
But moving on to Theresa, to answer your question, I think one good example from our industry is, so this was started by a sports broadcaster who was just following, the news and everything the last month or two. and decided to step up and organize a Black Broadcasters Play-by-Play grant, because he recognized that in the sports broadcasting industry, especially at the minor league level, you don't get paid a whole lot, especially when you're starting out. So there's a real barrier to entry there for folks that don't have financial resources, that can't rely on mom and dad maybe to help them through those first couple of years of their career. So he went to a bunch of play-by-play broadcasters all across the country, and they've all committed to kicking in money for a grant program to help fund an opportunity for Black play-by-play broadcasters to get their start in baseball. So our play-by-play broadcaster contributed to that initiative, and that's something that I've been thinking about. Could we even go beyond that? We have an internship program here that utilizes a lot of college students every summer. Are there things that we need to do structurally within that program to make sure that, Bethune-Cookman students or Daytona State students, all have access to the same opportunities as, a Clemson student or a Rutgers student would have to come here and be part of the Tortugas organization and get their start in the sports and entertainment business.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dre, for putting that in the chat. So thank you, Josh. I appreciate you putting that in the chat. It'd be interesting to read that article. Because I think one of the things being involved in this conversation over the past month or so in depth is that there's always what we're doing is good, but it's not good enough, or what you're doing is wrong, or, you can find something. And again, Dr. Kendi mentioned it last night. Some people are critical of people that are doing book studies. Well, at least we're trying to learn. So, you can find the pros and cons on everything you're trying to do. And I would hope that we would give each other credit for showing up and trying to make a difference and trying to make change, because now's the time. It's overdue, and to bring this conversation to the forefront. And I applaud the mayor and the people that are running these groups for doing just that, and for you guys to be here and have thoughts and conversation and communication about what we can do. So anybody else on that topic, what can you commit to doing better, more of? You want to share a best practice? Hi, Sharon, good to see your face. Share a best practice, or even a practice that maybe your company thought was a best practice, but in reality was not. We can learn from things we've tried to do that we screwed up. Dre, go ahead.
So, I tend to be like rather busy. Really a lot of things going on. Plus my wife, we just had a baby just a month.
Oh, congratulations.
I have a month-old little girl at home, so not a lot of sleep. And then my wife is a U.S. ambassador to other countries for teaching music education as well. So we are like super consumed with so many things. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to call myself, I'm a financial member of a lot of things, which means that if it's donate $20 or donate $10, or if I have an hour or two of time. So there's a kid in the city here named Rel Black, and he does a bunch of community cleanup things, and he does like cleanup on MLK at the beach after they had that big crazy event a few months ago when all those kids were wilding. Him and a group of people went out the following day, and a couple churches. So I find myself like donating to like different churches, different organizations that I see actively doing the things that I wish I could do. So, I'm not old, but I'm 38, and when they were protesting, I went out, and it was interesting because I protested first with Angela Davis when I was like 19 years old in Rochester, New York. And it was interesting because now I was standing there about an hour in, I'm like, man, these feet and these knees ain't got it like they used to. You know, this is not the idea of protesting, the idea of those things and the activism, that's a young man's game. And like young, I mean like 20, 21, you know, they're young, and I feel like sometimes investing in them, if it's buying a case of water, if it's going to Kel Cafe. They had a community event a few weeks ago, and we just my wife and I, we just donated some water and some snacks for the workers. So it's really, to me, a lot of times it's like, put your money where your mouth is, and it doesn't have to be $10,000. It could be $5,000, but $25 can go a long way in supporting the community or the area that you live in. And so that's what I personally do, is if I can't get to put my hands on something, I can send, you know, a little token of support or something that I can utilize to help whatever is going on. And that's any of you guys that have initiatives. I would love to be involved in supporting however I can. I would love to see the vision of it. And if I can support her, I would love to, please. And I would love to hear from you guys.
Thank you, Dre. Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about something they can do differently before we move on?
Hi, Miss Theresa.
Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Hello, everyone. I have a question, and it's kind of on the same page, but it's not. You're asking, what can we do? My question to you and the mayor, if you have done everything, you have made basically the city, the mayor, commissioners, city manager aware of your concern in your community, and no one listens, what do you do next? How to make things better or make them aware of what's going on when they're not listening? So I kind of want to know from there. And if they don't know, they don't know, but can someone tell me, where do we go from there? How do I get this awareness to them? How do they listen? Because so far I'm a business owner of MLK and no one's listening.
Okay. I think that's a great question, and one that probably more than you have on what do we do when they're not listening. Mayor, I can answer, but I think you're the best person to answer.
Well, she has a unique situation that she's working with and trying to work through, and certainly people are aware of what has transpired, and it's a situation that is in some ways an example of why we're here. While they have that street has been completely redone where she lives or where she works, and the quality of the work is not an example of the equity that I aspire for in our community. But by the same token, it doesn't reflect the commitment that the commission had as it relates, because we spent a lot of money on the project, tremendous amount of money. And so I'm not happy with the results. But, you know, we will have to continue to work on it. And I've asked, you know, and I'm looking for ways that we can maybe make it better. But sometimes you don't have all the answers. And the purpose really of these sessions is to be certain that we recognize that all of what we're aspiring to as it relates to equity is not going to be done on the shoulders of government. And at the end of the day, and even at the end of this session, I will share some things because government can't solve all of our problems. We have systemic problems that reach well beyond government, but you're talking about a project that, in my mind, certainly showed a commitment on government's part, but in some ways a failure to really address everything that you may think is being, that you might have thought should be addressed. But at the end of the day, I will discuss at the end of this session some things that I'm hoping to bring to our community that I think will empower us as a community to all be the change that we're aspiring to be, and to give us an opportunity to come together. So I'll discuss it, and it's a little bit of a ways off, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do understand where Sharon's coming from.
So with that said, Mayor, who makes those decisions? Who has the authorization to come in and make change in these business community, whether it's mine or someone else? Who is authorized when they see a mistake? Who has the power, or who's authorized to make those changes?
You have to be specific, but the businesses themselves have to make the change. I don't,
okay.
This forum is not really, the purpose of this forum is not to go tit for tat as it relates to making change. This is a community effort. And from my perspective,
Correct.
when when I voted and supported the authorization of spending, over $2.5 million, that's the change that government can make. Now, the fact that it may not have met the standard that I think it should have met, then is a change that we have to address and make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
So what you say in the future, what about now?
Well, I'm working, I haven't been given any examples of what I can do right now to change that, but I'm not, this is not really the forum to address that. This is just specifically not the forum for that.
So this means the equity, because this does have to do with equity. For instance, in the last meeting that I was here, I did bring up, you said what was equity. And I explained to everyone that my equity has been taken away from me as a business owner and as a commercial owner. And I speak for the community. Our equity, we have lost equity due to what the city has taken away, and that's parking. And I know you're aware of the parking that has been taken from us. So now our business has been affected. So if I decide to sell my building, I have no equity, no one is going to buy it. So how do we put my equity back from what the city has
we've
taken?
been discussing some ways, and we're trying to figure a way to get some more parking in there for you.
Okay.
But that's not something that can be done just like the street repair and the money that came to fix that street didn't come overnight. That's not going to come in a matter of a week or 2 weeks, and I don't have a timetable, but that's something that we have to go back to the drawing board, and the entire commission has to say, we're going to address this, and this is how we'll address it. But this is not the forum for that.
Okay. And I think Sharon, to answer your question in just a general way, not knowing the history, obviously, that's here, and Sue put it in the chat, we have to keep communicating.
Correct.
We have to continue to have conversation. We have to continue the best of our ability, not to be defensive, not to be judgmental, but to keep the conversation moving. Because silence doesn't get anything done.
Right.
And I'm going to butcher this saying, but my dad used to say the squeaky wheel gets oiled. Is that the right use of that saying?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's very true. It just is, because whether it's the city of Daytona or Volusia County or any city in America, they got a lot on their plate.
Correct.
And so as citizens, it's up to us. Sarah, go ahead and unmute yourself. It's up to us to continue bringing those things in a very respectful but firm way to the attention of those that can help us make the difference with what we're trying to do as well. It is a partnership. We said that early on in the first meeting, because I think it was in the very, very first meeting, somebody asked about the resources that the city was putting behind this. And the answer is they're not. This is for the community to come forward and try to help solve our own issues relating around equity. And I think the mayor just bringing these communities together and these groups together is an awful lot for the city to do. And I'm not saying they can't be partners, and they should be partners, and they have been partners. But it's going to take all of us to do those things. Sarah, thank you, Sharon. Sarah?
So I was just going to say, I have absolutely no idea what Sharon is talking about, but I think that I would love to see our community, Mayor Henry, from a government standpoint, where these areas are, where you have the money and where you don't, some of these realities. And I think that, you know, these are areas where private businesses and media can absolutely make a difference. So, I mean, and I'm not talking just, you know, International Speedway or Brown and Brown, which are the typical targets, I'm sure, over and over, that, you know, have the resources to throw tons of money at something. But if there are projects out there that need to be done, all it takes will. It takes political will, personal will, corporate will. It takes intentionality and will to do that. And you know, I certainly am not a Brown and Brown, but if I was aware as a business owner of projects out there that could change the equity in our community, I would be all in. Dre would be all in. If it's $25, I mean, Dre's in. So I would suggest that we think about moving forward, that us businesses and media, the media could pull a lot of money, that we all pull together as a group and try to take care of some things that government and policy can't. You know, to answer your question, Sharon, if you read the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, I will tell you that Ibram will say that policy is where it's at.
Policy, absolutely.
And I think that we always all think of policy as like government. That is not the definition of policy. Policy is business policy, personal family policy. Policy is not just government. So, you know, when you, and the other thing that Ibram says is, you know, we can talk about being equitable, but I'm going to use his words. He says he does not want to use, he wants to eliminate the term not racist.
Yes.
Because everybody's racist. So you're either racist or you're anti-racist. Okay? There is no in between. There's not, you know, I'm not racist. No, you're racist or you're anti-racist. And I think that if we're either going to be equitable, or we're just going to be complacent. We're either going to fight for equity, or we're just going to be complacent. There is no in between. So I would suggest that would be a suggestion that I would have. You know, certainly I'm speaking on behalf of Brown and Brown International Speedway and my little Southeast Insulator Supply Company that says, you know what, as business owners, and Dre, you know, as business owners, we want to have a stake in this for those of us who want to make a difference. And that would be a great place, I think, to at least start collaborating and compiling lists and making us aware.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sarah.
I just want to ask a question because I my brain works a little different, and I'm you know, I never knock the government for they're busy, just like as business owners. Like sometimes, like I'll tell you something I tell my team all the time. They come in here and they hit the switch. No one cares about whether or not the lights are going to come on or off. They never even think about it because they're so preoccupied with what they have going on. And one of the things that I would suggest after hearing what Sarah said was, why don't we just put some things down that we want to tackle and tackle them? I think it's much easier to say what we think solutions are, put those down, and then either do it or don't do it. Because we could meet for, like, if they keep saying if the meeting's unproductive, we're not gonna meet no more. So let's make the meeting productive by saying, hey, we're gonna do this, or we're gonna plant some trees, or we're gonna put up a fence, or we're gonna, whatever we can do collectively as this small group here. This is the task force. So when we're like, who's gonna do something, it's kind of us, because we're kind of saying we are. So like I would, like I said, I would love to clean Samuel Butt's park. I don't know exactly how that would work or who would be down to do that, but that's something that I would be down to even spearhead. It's on Bellevue, and it has like a 1 mile running area around it, and it's you know, it's right by Nova. I would be down to spearhead that. I would be down to pick the date. I would be down to start getting people together. I would be down to start helping allocate supplies. But I would love to get together with you guys to get the resources to do all of these things and have the bodies. And we can do this for every part. Like, we can do this for all the parks. We can do this for all of the streets. Like, even on MLK, like some of them raggedy, they don't put them nice fix the curbs and the sidewalks and stuff. We can go out there and paint some of those ugly buildings. We can go out there and put some fences up. Like, I don't do labor like that, guys. I don't know nothing about fences or construction. That's not my wheelhouse. I got soft hands, no calluses. However, I know how to help get it done, and I know how to get people that's down to do it. And I will lift something and move something. So if I don't know, but if we could figure out some things that maybe some of you business owners or some of you guys who have staples in the community feel like we need to attack. I'm young. I'm down to follow anyone's lead to do whatever that's going to produce a result. So if anybody has anything that we want to connect together and do that's result oriented, like, I'm super down for that. But I just think we should do some things like that. So I would like to clean Samuel Butts Park. I don't know who else got something they want to do, but I'm down for whoever has anything to do.
Great.
Put that in the chat, Dre, so we can go ahead and you can plan that. And we will, a part of what we're doing now is, and this will come, later in a way that I want the whole community to be able to do these sorts of things. And we'll have a sort of a platform where we can feed into the things that we like as a form of service. But put that in the chat and then we can promote it. You get the date out. And you determine all of that, and then we'll share it with all of the other groups and everybody who's a part of these initiatives and throughout the community, and we'll get it done. That's a simple solution, but it's the types of solutions that go a long way to making a community a better place. So thank you.
And it's the things, to use Sharon's word. I see you, Mark, you're next. So go ahead and unmute yourself. It's the things that, I can't remember, Mayor, if you said it or Sharon said it, but it's awareness. So all of a sudden, this diverse group is out doing something like that. And I don't think we have any media people on here, but that's media worthy. I'd much rather read about that than the latest whatever we're reading about these days. And I think that brings that type of real action will bring more awareness to the work all of these focus groups are trying to do. So, okay, that's what the business media group's doing. What is education? What is health? And we convene all those groups together. So Mark, have you go ahead. You've been patient. Thank you. And then I'm going to bring up one other thing for us to chat about.
I'm going to say that, it sounds like if we're going to have some action, it's time to form some committees. And I think Dre already volunteered to chair that cleanup committee. Which I will be more than happy to. I don't mind getting dirty, or I can be a resource there. I'd love to be a resource in marketing. I think I mentioned on the last week's call that there's a statewide Black-owned businesses page out there, but there aren't many Black-owned businesses on it. I think we need to figure out how to market the Black community better. Now I'm a retired guy, but I've come with sales background, sales and marketing, got a lot of experience. Would love to help any way I can.
That's great. And you did mention that last time, and I have not taken the liberty to go on and look. And I know the mayor had chatted about getting a list like that together and out. So thank you.
So Mark, is that something that you think you would be interested in helping us to?
Yeah, I would be very interested in helping with that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So last week, we had Brown and Brown represented and we had NASCAR represented, and I'm not sure if they are today or not. I see some names, a couple of names I don't recognize. And I bring them up because Cheryl Coxwell from NASCAR talked about their, I think she called it their diversity and inclusion. I don't think it was called DEI, and Nancy Kiefer was on the call, and she sent me, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Chamber magazine Evolve. Back last year, they did an entire issue on diversity initiatives, which I had quite frankly forgotten about. So Mayor, I don't know if she copied you on that, but I need to send you that digital magazine.
Okay.
It was really well done. And it's something that I think if we could get out, maybe on your Facebook page, even for people to re-jog their memory about that. So I'll send that to you. But is there anyone on here that has in their business, D&I or DE&I, any kind of diversity initiative that they've had for a long time or they're starting? I know Robin talked about initiating that. Is there any of you that have that we can learn from? So the radio silence there is very telling.
I worked for Gordon Food Service before retired in January of this year. They probably 3 or 4 years ago started a diversity and inclusion program. I mean, I was very fortunate. The culture of that company was outstanding. I would be more than happy to reach out to someone there just for some input on how they did it, you know, what their initiatives were. I know the company was 115 years old, out of Western Michigan, you know, was needed to be integrated, needed to come up to the standards, and the family and the company saw that and made it happen very quickly. I was impressed in the short time I was with the company how quickly we became a diverse company, and I think that inclusion program was a big part of it.
Interesting. Good. Anyone else? Have an organization that has a D&I initiative or platform?
Theresa, minor league baseball has a pretty extensive diversity and inclusion initiative led by the national office in St. Petersburg. I think they recognize that you know, a lot of the clubs, especially in markets even smaller than ours, need you know, a little boost from the national organization. So they're constantly sending out you know, here's resources about Pride Month, here's resources about Juneteenth, and all these different ways to kind of lead diversity and inclusion in their own communities.
Cool. Maybe I'll, Mayor, with your blessing, I might reach back out to Cheryl to join us on our next call and maybe speak a little more in depth about what they've done, because they've had their work and they'll be the first to admit they're not perfect. You know, every time they make a move, they're in the paper, so we know that. But they are a company that is putting forth the effort, and they were doing it long before this initiative started. So I think maybe we could learn some things from them, because I am a believer that a lot of our larger organizations can really do a lot to move that needle if they just know what to do. You know, we talked about in our pre-planning, you know, can a company, maybe you're not a large company, and Sarah, you talked about your company being a small company, but do you have an equity ambassador? You know, what is an equity ambassador? Is it a conversation? It doesn't have to be a formal, and Josh, the why was like you, our national office has huge diversity, equity and inclusion material and platforms and all of that. But I think it would be great if we could pull some in our county already that are doing it, that maybe each of the business owners can pick and choose pieces to get started with. I think that's a very actionable item for this group.
Theresa, I'd like to just add, you know, our offices are in the NASCAR headquarters building, International Motorsports Center.
Right.
So, you know, I've seen what they do. I'm not able to speak to it, but I have been a guest annually at their Diversity Awards luncheon, and they take a great amount of time and effort to include drivers and staff members from all nationalities, Hispanic, everything. And they do an award ceremony each year during race week. So I've been a guest there, and it's amazing the amount of awards that are given to drivers and teams of all ethnicity. So they do a great amount, and I know that they do, as Cheryl said, there are internships, and I've met some of their interns just riding up in the elevator. So they do a great job with diversity as far as that's concerned. But I'm not able to speak to NASCAR.
Right.
I'm
right.
just a tenant of the building.
Thank you. Thank you. Jenny, you've been awfully quiet. I see you out there in your photo drinking coffee. You and I had a couple offline conversations after the last meeting. Anything you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for calling on me. I was actually just feeling shy to speak in front of all these people because everybody's, I don't know, there's a lot of really high profile people in here doing great things.
It's safe space.
Safe space. Well, the things that I notice are up for me in my work is, okay, so my field of design and activism is called permaculture, and it's creating a sustainable society. And a lot of times this movement and design principles get associated with organic farming and gardening. And certainly growing food, fresh food near where the people live is a huge part of equity. And it's a huge part of an eco-sustainable society. But it's every area of life. And so one of my fronts of work right now is to talk to insiders in my field about why racism, anti-racism, why this totally belongs in our conversation. And we have always, by the nature of our work as permaculturists, we actually draw on best practices from throughout history and all over the world for land management. So for example, here in Florida, we use a lot of ancient Asian practices and vegetables that are grown in Asia through their hot season. So a lot of people who can't grow conventional crops through the Florida summer, well, there's a lot of permaculturists in Florida experimenting with Asian and African tubers that are grown in very hot, humid climates. So anyway, let's see, what else, Teresa? What else shall I say? What might be helpful here? I had an idea that I shared privately with Teresa, and it was about, well, I get around by bicycle. I ride around town a lot, and I see a lot of houses that are falling apart. And then sometimes I snoop around and find out who the owner is, and it'll sometimes turn out that it's an absentee owner. And then I see a lot of signs for "we buy houses," and it's people who want to buy houses and then flip them. And the thought that always comes to me was, we don't need people to buy houses, paint them or whatever, and then jack up the price and make them even less affordable to live in. We need people who live here to be able to buy houses and live in them. And so I have had this thought, what if we had a local private fund? It would be an investment fund that anyone could invest in. A person could invest in it with $20 or $200,000. And the fund would be for the purpose of lending money to help local people buy homes and buy commercial properties right in the city. And I don't know if that's called a real estate trust or a land trust, or if those things are a little different, but I think it would be a really good thing. I think it would be a way for us to channel our investment. And my mother passed, and that's how I was able to buy my house. And I have a little bit of additional money from that. And I was thinking I would love to start putting my money into something where it's doing something. Like, wow, we're buying houses and we're doing financing for local people. That would be really exciting to me.
Yeah.
And would love to hear if other people have thoughts about that.
And Jenny, as I told you when we were corresponding back and forth, I think that's a great idea. And I think it's something, I don't know if you've been sitting in on the other focus groups, but the housing
Yes.
group, I think that would be, I hope you would share that with the housing group,
I will.
And I think that's a good example of how, Mayor, so many of these groups are going to cross over each other. I'm still in shock about the lack of diversity training we have for our teachers.
Mhm.
That's the one takeaway I had from the education committee last week. And I cannot believe they have, and correct me if I'm wrong, 1 hour is required.
Mm.
Mayor, was that right? Did I hear that right?
That's what they, 1 hour required, but I would say that it goes, you know, I've had a lot more training in education than 1 hour. It's according to your staff and where you work, and
Yeah.
thanks to this issue of equity, we did in my school, we've done the poverty simulation training.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, and that's something I'd like to see. And I've spoken with someone from the United Way that hopefully eventually we will have exposure to that as anyone involved in this equity training. The issue is with COVID, how do you do it?
Yeah.
You know, without, you know, being able to be face to face. How do you do it remotely? But I've had a lot more training than that in education.
Yeah.
It depends on your school and your setting. So I think that's sort of overstated.
Yeah. But my fear, Mayor, is that, you know, obviously you and Primrose and some of the other people we know that have been involved in this conversation, they have it because they want it. What about the people that don't think they need it or don't want it and aren't forced to have it? And I know that's probably a question for another day, but that's my concern, that there are teachers that aren't going to do the extra. And you may require it in your school, but does Joe Smith down the street require it in his school? I don't know.
That's true.
Because education of our children in this arena is what's going to change the world.
And that's
So,
a fair assessment.
That's somebody. Karen, did you raise your hand? Yes. Unmute.
Yeah, I did.
Hi.
Hi. I was in that meeting also with the education, and I think what the young teachers were saying is that typically in orientation for brand new teachers coming in, they had 6 hours of diversity training, and due to funding, it had been cut down to 1 hour.
Right.
And so that was the issue there. And I know when Dr. Amy Hall was with the school system, she was really working on restorative practices, which really makes each classroom like a little village. And I think it's a wonderful way, you know, for children that are white to understand what's going on in households with children who have much less. It's been a little bit side railed, but we're hoping to get it back on.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of things we can do and things we can volunteer, I think that would be a place that, you know, I would be willing to volunteer in the school system. And I think a lot of people would. So, and Mayor, I love the idea of the, what do you call it? I just know it is SimSoc. That's what you're talking about, right? That type of training with these groups would be amazing.
Yes.
So, Mayor, I have gone through my list of questions and comments, and I don't want to stay to 12 just because we can. So if you have any other questions or comments, and then I wanted to go back to Dre and or Robin, because they've been chatting incessantly about park cleanup. So I want to kind of not leave without wrapping that up.
Well, go ahead and wrap that up first.
Okay, and Sarah had something to say, so I'll do that. And then Dre, if you want to kind of tell us what's going on in that arena, and then we'll let the mayor close us out. But we have till noon, so don't leave if you have something to say. Hi, James, good to see you. Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I want to say to Bob Williams, and because I know that I attended the health and social services meeting last week, and I plan to this week if I possibly can. But I definitely think that, you know, I challenge the other facilitators to, you know, for Bob, for example, to ask his peeps in that meeting, is there anything health or social service related that we can ask our business and media folks for? So same thing with education. You know, I think I kind of brought up in the last meeting, you know, one of the things from an education standpoint and training is, I actually asked the employers in that meeting, do we really need a bachelor's degree for an administrative assistant? I mean, I started out as an administrative assistant. I have no college. I have only a theology master's certificate, and that's in my adult life. But do we really, if education came to us and said, we need our people to have jobs. And one of the things you people could do is to stop requiring a bachelor's degree for an entry-level admin position, just because you have to have a bachelor's degree. So I guess I just wanted to bring up to any of those on this call, in this meeting that are in the other focus groups, we have a lot of power in this group right here. And we can go and cross over and help in areas where government or public funds can't. But we don't know what we don't know. So, I would ask Bob and whoever's facilitating especially I think education and healthcare, to ask your people what businesses and media can do to help.
Good conversation. And quite frankly, I guess that's a great question for all the groups, Mayor, to ask each other.
It is.
I see you frantically writing, so you must have thought so as well. All right, James, you joined us late, or have you been out there?
Hey.
Hang on, Dre. James, can you unmute yourself? Nope, you're still muted.
All right,
There
can you hear me now?
are.
All righty then. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry I did come in late. I had some technical difficulties. But what was the initial question? Because I did get the email from Ms. Goodman in reference to coming up with some suggestions and whatever. But where are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, of course. We've had a lot of conversations. A lot of people gave their own thoughts on, I have to look at my notes now, what our individual thoughts of equity are. And we had a lot of conversations around male, female, black, white, all of the above, rich, poor. And then we talked about commitments each of us would make or would want to make or consider as what can we do to move the needle in our own sphere of influence, whether that's personally or whether you're in the C-suite of your business, those types of things. So we've had some good, robust conversation.
When you say move the needle in which way are we talking about? Bringing the community together?
And in increasing equity among our citizens, which is, I realize, a wide open question, but I will tell you this has all been recorded.
Right.
So it's Sharon, right, Mayor, that sends out the correspondence?
Sure.
Sherry, okay. But she's been sending out the recording, so hopefully you'll get a chance to go back and listen to it, and then maybe give us some of your thoughts next week. Go ahead.
Is there anybody like from the media, like from the news journal or from radio stations or any other newspapers that are actually?
There has not. I asked that question. There's no one here.
Pat Rice has listened to the calls.
Good.
And he was on the first call. He's not here today.
Who was that, Pat Rice?
Pat Rice.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. I know Pat. Something, because this is what I've had a chance to talk with Pat about. And I've been in, like I said, I've been in the media business for about 40 years. And unfortunately, the city is at the will, and when you have a county as small as Daytona, and you only have one newspaper, they determine, and that's for local. I'm not including the weeklies, such as the other papers that I've worked for. I've worked for 3 different newspapers in this area, but Hometown News, Daytona Times, and the News Journal. But most of the pickups, and as Headline Surfer, I work for them too. But most of the information that goes national goes through the News Journal. Because I'm sure you all may know or may not know that Eileen, I think, who writes most of the City Beat paper information, basically determines what goes national or statewide. She'll pick 1 or 2 stories that you all talk about at a meeting, for example, and choose to focus on it. And that's why, is Susan on the line with us, Susan Sorbonne?
No, she's not on the line, but she's probably watching it on TV.
Okay.
The staff, other than
And
watching.
like I said, I'm sure she has her plate full. But one thing that you all have never done, and this is what I was hopefully at some point you do in the future, is start, if you want more information about some of the things that are on the agenda, or if you want issues actually covered, you got to start sending out actual press releases to the various newspapers, radio stations, and not just local. We're talking, if you want the exposure, you've got to send out press releases. Like I said, there could be 5 or 6 different things that you definitely want highlighted. And that's just a matter of having in your database all the different radio stations, newspapers, where it'll go national, or even send the press releases to the New York Times or to the Washington Post or to the Miami Herald or wherever, or the Atlanta. You can start sending whatever you want out there so that you can get some exposure. Because the problem I think with there is no real PR department for the city, so to speak. I mean, you've got Susan, who's basically handling a lot of different things. But
Susan now has 3 people that work for her, James.
She has 3 people working with her? She does?
Yep.
I'm curious as to what is it that they do?
A lot different. A lot of it is social media. A lot of it is video. We have, the news feed on the channel. My mayor's the spotlights that I do are all produced by them. What Dr. Durham does on the radio comes out of that.
Okay.
There's a lot more involved. And she'll be talking with you about.
I know y'all you'll do the little weekly thing that you send out, the newsletter. I see that, making certain announcements. But I mean, there may be actual items on the agenda which you want to really bring some attention to that requires actual press release. And like I said, the news journal may not actually cover it, but other papers might cover it. I mean, again, Eileen is going to use or choose to cover what she thinks is newsworthy. That's just something I think y'all might want to consider doing a lot more of. Definitely, because then you could send 5 or 6 different press releases out for different agenda items. For example, like last week, in reference to, like I said, I noticed that they didn't do a story about the vote for the Public Citizens Committee. There wasn't a story about that in the news journal last week. Or was there nothing in the paper about the fact that you all are trying to sell off those items, you're going to demolish all those buildings in the Black areas? To me, those are some important stories that should have gotten some exposure. Are you with me, Mayor?
I'm with you.
Okay, so those are some stories that, people need to know that stuff is coming up. If they weren't at the meeting or didn't watch it, they aren't aware that it is going to be happening. So there's a lot of important nooks and crannies that the citizenry is not aware of because the news journal chose not to cover it. And what the TV stations do, and I've worked for TV stations too, most TV stations will pick up the weekly paper of that area and just see whatever it was written from that perspective, and they'll cover it or not cover it. I mean, you can probably ask Claire Metz about that. Claire is another good source who you might want to check with. But that's basically what they do at the channel 6, 2, and 9. They'll go to the websites of these various newspapers, and I'm sort of dating myself because there was a time we just checked the newspaper, but nowadays they're probably checking their websites. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm just kind of spitballing. One thing though, Mr. Mayor, I did want to. You're talking about equity, and like I said, I kind of was upset, and maybe I didn't quite understand you last week that you kind of chose to, in reference to this fair chance rule that you all have. Has anyone even talked about that? I mean, how serious are you all utilizing, sir?
You're going off on the beaten path, but that issue that you're addressing, that was a decision that the commission made, and it was a compromised decision that it wasn't necessarily my choice, but that's I won't say it's really not pertinent to this discussion.
Right.
Well, you're talking about equity, and if we're talking about equity in general,
okay,
we won't talk about that specific issue, Well, then we're talking about equity. And if this is something you're wanting more of in the city, especially if it's coming to putting people on certain boards or hiring people for the city, if the role model you're setting is that you're not going to follow up on what you've written about, how are you actually, what message are you sending out?
Well, that's a fair criticism, and I'll accept that criticism. And I didn't necessarily, that wasn't my choice, but it's a choice that the commission decided. So I accept the criticism, and I'll leave it at that.
Has the fair chance policy actually been doing what it was set out to do?
Yes.
I'm curious as to, you're talking about businesses. How does the city of Daytona Beach compare with the percentages of blacks in particular percentage of blacks working for Daytona compared to some of the businesses that are on this committee? Because I know certain smaller businesses can't have a high percentage of blacks on their payroll because of whatever the payroll is. But do you all compare in reference to some of the more larger businesses out there in reference to the percentage?
I'm very sure that we do. But I mean, I can't contrast because I don't know their numbers. Our numbers are public record, and they were publicized sometime last week. I'm not looking at them, but they're public record. So they don't have to have the same transparency that we do, but I'm sure that we exceed the majority of businesses in the community that are large or come close to them. But
yes, sir. I'll get off the line. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, James. And I hope you'll go back and listen to the entire conversation today in preparation for our next meeting. And I think we can all talk or think about between now and the time we meet, what is our own personal sphere of influence? And do we, if we're going to embark on these action items and this work, I'll kind of end it before I turn it back over to Dre. Do we need to personally expand our own sphere of influence so that we understand where other people are coming from? People that agree with us and people that don't agree with us. Because that's where the change is going to be made, is that when we expand our sphere of influence, whether we're in business or we're in media, whatever we're in, that we begin to learn from other people. Because as we started the conversation, we all are good people, but we're also all capable of being racist or prejudiced and not keeping equity at the forefront of our thought. So a couple things, go back and listen to the entire thing if you were late today, and then listen to Dr. Ibram Kendi, it's his last name. I always call him by his first name by mistake. The YouTube, I put that in the chat. Robin put some good material in the chat. I did find the Evolve magazine that's talking about diversity with NASCAR and some of the other companies that I think would be good pre-reading before our next meeting. I put that in the chat. So again, click on those three little dots and you can save the chat so you can go back and find all those links. And then I tried to put the conversation that Dr. Primrose and I are having with our groups on Thursday night in the chat, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But this Thursday night, I'll put it, Mayor, I'll send it to you to post on your Facebook page when we get off the conversation, because we have our call Thursday night and anybody is welcome. You don't have to read the book. We facilitate the questions and it's just a lot of good open conversation. Sarah, you had something?
I just want to say our first sphere of influence that we could all do is try to get more people on this call.
Yes.
The Journal, everybody, Hometown News, they need to be on here. If anybody here knows them, they need to be on this call. We should have a lot more businesses on this call. So one of the very first things we can do is to get more people on this call. So
yeah,
encourage all of us to go out and invite. You can't just wait for them to show up. They don't. So we got to invite people. Absolutely.
Can I say something, Robin?
Yes.
See, this is something that is the biggest secret in Daytona Beach. And unless it's something that's changed, the News Journal has no blacks on their editorial board. And to my knowledge, they have no black reporters as well. It's just the Hometown News. I'm the only one that has worked for all of these places. So does the Hometown News. have any blacks working for them, and which is sad. You know, when I worked for the News Journal, it was when the Davisons owned the paper. I don't know if some of you know who they are. But Tippett Davison, and that was the prior owners of the paper. But since these new owners came to town, they're having diversity on the paper. And I've talked to Pat about this. He knows how I feel, that they don't have any blacks, to my knowledge, that are actually working in the editorial portion or as a reporter or at the hometown news. So when you don't have that voice, and you can have that voice and the person doesn't necessarily have to be black per se, but the News Journal is more Republican leaning now than they ever have been as far as their editorial policy. I'm just putting it out there, and that's okay. But that's something that needs to be known. So that more pressure needs to be put on them to hire more people of color, I think. The News Journal, Hometown News, and what was the third paper? I think there's a third paper here in this area. Daytona Times, of course, is a black paper, so, and they have white people working for them, believe it or not. But that's something that should be out there in the atmosphere. So I think WNDB is another radio station that's a major station. They don't have any black or people of color, to my knowledge, working for them. That's sad when we've gone backwards in reference to the diversity in the media.
Thank you, James. And I know, Mayor, if we chat with Pat, maybe we can have him on a call. I know he has a lot going on professionally and personally right now. But I would love maybe if we even had an offline conversation, or he could send somebody from the media, that'd be great. And then I'll reach out to Cheryl Coxwell to see if she will join us next week, since we've sent out that article or that magazine where they were focused. I'm sure she'll be glad to do that. I don't think we had anybody from the banks here this week either. And last week we had a representative from the Bank of America. And then, unless somebody says so, I don't think we had any bank representatives. So I may reach out to at least a community bank to see if they would join us next week. Any of you people in business that do business with the community banks, I think that would be a great place to see if we could get some folks to join us. Because Sarah's right. That's our sphere of influence, to reach out and bring more people in to make this conversation more robust. Not that it's not robust. We have some great people here, but the more we can include, there's power in numbers.
I think too that it would be nice if we had attorneys on here. I mean, I'm going to reach out to Cobb and Cole. I'm going to reach out to SunTrust. Those are, my business relationships, and I don't see either one of them on here. So I think that, attorneys should be on here as well.
Yeah, good point.
And even accountants. Because, money, legal, financing, all of this is a part of the need of equity. So
yeah. And Clayton Park is the business person, so maybe Clayton can join us. Okay, Dre, where'd you go? This thing keeps moving, people. There you are. So you want to wrap us up with our first action item?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that we have absolutely solid is that Robin suggested we all, or whoever would like to, meet Thursday morning at 8:00 at the park. And that we can do a small assessment in regards to what may need to be done. And I just kind of want to say this too, just as a quick thing. Like, I'm down for getting all the, like, I see some comments about, like, Pierre, you have some amazing ideas. The only thing that I don't want to do, and this is no knock or anything, I don't want to wait on anybody to like mobilize it for it to get done, because that's the point of this call, is for accountability. One of the big things about equity is you have to see the equity and the value in yourself to be equitable, right? Like, so I think the first thing, and even if it's just the first part first, and then we get all the commissioners and we get everybody, I'm down with that. But like, let's just start now. The mayor, Mr. Mayor, said that he has a couple of those dates, early morning work. So I would say we meet on this Thursday, and we meet there, which I think is the 23rd at 8:00. and we can do a walkthrough. And I mean, if anybody wants to get their exercise on, you know, you're there, so we can walk through and see the different things. I know for one that the water is like super gross. Like there's just trash like right on the like border of like the water and the grass and stuff like that. The ducks have pooped everywhere, you know what I mean? And there's just junk there. It may not even be a very extensive or tedious thing, but just to get it started, I think meeting there Thursday to see what needs to be assessed, and maybe there's some more expertise to say, no, this is going to take 4 hours, so we'll say, okay, cool, 8 to 12. The date suggested right now is either the August 9th, August 2nd, which are Sundays, or July 31st or August 1st, which are Saturdays. And so those are the minimal logistics here right now. I'm gonna put my email in the chat as well, and anybody can hit me up. And then if I can, I'm gonna reach out to Robin, and I'm gonna reach out to you, Theresa, and Mr. Mayor will reach out to your office and kind of just get everything consolidated. And we can
I say you go ahead and pick a date though now.
I agree.
I'm with y'all. I'm open to whatever
I
date.
agree.
What's best for everyone?
I prefer an early Sunday morning. It doesn't matter Sunday or Saturday, but either day is good. But I would just pick Sunday because I like getting up earlier on Sunday. But this is not going to take that long. But I'm trying to make the assessment on Thursday morning. I'm not sure I'll make the assessment, but I will make the date of the cleanup.
Let's do August 2nd. You like August 2nd, everyone?
Yeah.
We can do the 2nd with the 9th as our rain backup date.
Okay, I love that.
That was great. Yeah. 9th rain.
And what's the name of the park again? Someone asked. I'm typing as we do
Butts'
this.
first name is Butts Park.
Samuel Butts.
Samuel, yes. Go ahead.
On Bevel.
Yes, it's on
Bellevue.
It's on Bellevue. It's on
Bellevue.
Yeah, it's just east of Nova. Everyone.
On the north side.
And west of MLK.
Say that one more time.
And west of MLK.
Yes. It's literally like it's on the right hand side. Let me just give you all the address. How about that?
I think I might have misspelled Bellevue wrong, but I put it in there.
Okay.
And maybe we can do a press release, Mayor, would be great.
Sure.
Okay, Mayor, I will ask you to make some closing remarks.
Okay, I have quite a few here, so this has been a very robust conversation, and I don't ever want to squash dialogue. Is Sharon still there? If she's not, I want to talk with her when we're done, but I do like to stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish here. But that is something that I do want to address, and so I will. I'd love to talk to you maybe later this afternoon if you want to text me and then call me. First thing is we're trying to create a resource page here at the City of Daytona Beach that is surrounding this equity initiative, because if we're going to be a community that thrives and embraces equity, we're going to need the tools necessary to do that. And a lot of what you all have put there are things that at some point staff, they're keeping a folder right now, and we will take that information and try to organize it in a way and create this as a part of underneath this Mayor's Equity Initiative. So keep the resources coming, because we will do better when we know better. And the more we know and the more we're challenged and presented with ways to be better, then it will set us on a path to do that. I want all of us, and I sent out a series of questions last week. Somehow I went to another email. I went to another email, but a series of questions to everyone. And it basically asked everyone to commit to an actionable agenda. And we talked about much of that today. And the reason that I originally, when I planned this, my original thought was that we would come back, you know, sometime in November after we all committed to an actionable agenda. And that we would work that agenda between now and November. But I'm hearing from you all that that's too much time. And so what I would ask is that you've got an agenda. If you don't have an agenda yet that you can be committed to, start to work on your agenda, work on writing it out, putting it in a format that will work for you and work for your agency. And maybe at some point we can create some sort of a template that says these are the things that you want to, because as we get more businesses and more people involved, we want to be able to share that with them. We want to be able to share something with them that says that this is what we mean by an example of an actionable agenda. Doesn't mean, and the one thing I want to be sure to remind everyone on this call of is that our goal is not to pressure anyone. It's not to coerce anyone. It's not to say you should, you should, you should. Because anyone who's engaged in these calls, they're here because they choose to come. Okay, this is not it's not from my perspective as a mayor, obviously I don't have the authority or the power to direct the Speedway or Brown and Brown or the tire shop across the street to do anything as it relates to equity. And nor is that my desire. My desire is by the sheer power of persuasion and by appealing to the inherent goodness that I know exists in this community to inspire and drive people to participate collectively in this work. So yes, go out and ask more people to join us. And by virtue of the temperament and the tone that we work with, I think we will inspire people to do the work. But we also have to give them a template of what the work looks like. So I do want you all to start thinking about, work on your own actionable agenda, and then let's work on how we can create a template that will say to other businesses, because there may come a time where we go around the businesses and go around the media and say to them, this is a template that we've embraced. Is this something that you could work with? As we recognize and identify, because I've said this all along, this is an organic process. Mm-hmm. And the more that we discuss and the more that we talk about, the more work that I see is going to come forward. Okay. But so that's one thing. The second thing is, I think we all have to say and commit to being equity ambassadors. And that's what we've talked about this morning when you all said you want to go out and invite more people to be a part of this call and a part of this process so that the conversation is robust, but also so that it covers the diversity that is represented in our community so that we can have the impact that we aspire to have. So commit yourselves to being an equity ambassador. And even as it relates to in your agency, assign people to those roles or to that role. Got the resource page. Okay. I think the final thing that I want to talk about is part of the reason that we're going to come back and meet in November, which we won't do now. We'll meet before that. But my thinking was that it would give, these first two meetings will give everyone an opportunity to develop an actionable agenda and then go out over the next 4, 5, 6 months and start to implement that in their place of business. I don't think we're there yet. So we'll attract more people, get more people committed to an actionable agenda, and then come back later. And so my original plan was that we would come back November, sometime mid-November, and I'm working with a group right now and they're in the process of designing and developing something that I think could be extremely helpful to our work and extremely helpful to my work as mayor. And basically it is a systems approach to taking in data and information from our community So it will all be done by virtue of things like your cell phone or your computer. Folks will be able to do assessments of themselves and input data. And after they input all of this data about themselves, and we as a community will be able to input data about, say, this is an example I was using for my wife last night. My son wants to play basketball and he wants to learn how to play basketball. I've got a single mother who is single. She's got 2 kids and one of them want to learn to play basketball. She doesn't know where to go for these resources. Okay. She would input her data. Nobody will know who she is necessarily, but the data then will come back and when she says, this is what I'd like to do, information about our community will be loaded into this, for lack of a better word, this database or this resource center. And that's a good word for it because it's like a resource center. We all in the community will be able to use this resource center by putting in our information, putting in our questions, taking a sort of an assessment about what we want to improve on. And then the resources will be made available to us to tell us where we can access this information to solve the problem that we have. Okay. The gentleman who's working on this is going to be much better at explaining this to us than I ever would be, because I'm still trying to process it fully myself to be able to explain it. But the purpose of it is this. It is one, to allow, enable, and to empower, most importantly, to empower the resident, the business owner, the college president, to have access to the information that they need to solve their problem. So if I have a personal problem and I don't know where the resources are, but I'm talking about my problem through this mode or means or methodology, this computer program, the program then will help me to navigate through my problem and give me advice and information about how to solve my problem. It's the second thing that it will do for me is that because it's going to assess and accumulate all of our data, all of our information, and it will organize the data and the information. So if I've got 100 people who say to me that I need childcare at night, as a mayor, I now will know that information. As a business owner, you now will have access to that information so that it will give you maybe the spark or the motivation to say, I need to provide this service to the community, and it could be a win-win for me and the community. And if you take that one example, there are literally hundreds of examples that could emerge from that. And by virtue of that, this would empower us to solve the equity problem as a community. And it also empowers me as a policymaker to create policies that address the needs that we have. And that's all of us, because we talked about who's a policymaker. We're all policymakers. But because this platform that I'm hoping we will be able to introduce in some novel way to the community in November, and this is not, we're not going to be the only community, but we'll be probably the first city that I hope to get signed up. Got a lot of work to do between now and November, but that's where I'm hoping that we are moving so that we can really authentically through this community really address equity in a way that I hope will be wholesome. And so that's where we are, and that's my dream, and that's my vision, and much of it is, as I said, is organic, but I see it coming to life. And so I want to again thank all of you for participating in this call. Recruit someone. We will plan to meet either at the end of August or the 1st of September. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? And we will get this information out. In the meantime, go to equityinitiative@codb.us to send your resources, to share information that you want us to get out to others. All right, thanks. And don't hesitate to be the ambassador for change that I feel that all of you are committed to be. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a great day, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.